What's good, Twitch your boys? Kerry Yaz back with another reaction. And today, we're reacting to Film 3, a Film Theory video. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse came out. A great movie, 10 out of 10. I did a review on my channel. If y'all want to go see that, you can go watch it on my channel. You know what I'm saying? About how I felt about it. And they're talking about the movie. You know what I'm saying? I want to see what Film Theory got to say about it, because I was a big fan of the movie, so we're going to see what they talk about. But if y'all new to my channel, hit that sub button, hit that like button, and hit that notification bell so you know when I post. Let's get to the reaction. Alright, y'all. This is Film Theory. Spider-Man's biggest threat is the the MCU. You know what I'm saying? Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Let's see what they're talking about.
Movie that's wild enough to include a T-Rex Spider-Man, a cat Spider-Man,
Hey, the cat Spider-Man goated.
Spider-Man, and Peter
Goated.
Parked Car the Spider-Mobile. You think they'd be smart enough to include literally the single best Spider-Man ever put to screen?
Who's
I am,
that?
of course, talking about Spider-Man, the Japanese Sentai Spider-Man with the
okay.
single best costume, a giant robot. He's also got himself
It's
a
Power
theme
Rangers.
song that slaps. We were robbed, I tell you. Robbed. Robbed!
Hey, yo. My catch is on.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show
Yes,
that'll put
sir.
its hand on your shoulder and say,
Hey.
So Spider-Man's kind of in an interesting spot in cinema, isn't he? The whole franchise has some of the best as well as some of the worst superhero movies ever made, even if the memes are always top
Yo,
shelf.
I like Spider-Man 3, bro. When I was younger and I first seen it, I really liked the movie, but that's just my opinion.
Little Goblin Jr. Gonna cry?
But one movie I don't think anyone saw going as hard as it did, 2018's animated Into
Spider-Man,
the Spider-Verse,
it
telling
went.
the story of
It
Miles
was
Morales
great, bro.
as he takes up the mantle of Spider-Man after his Peter Parker is killed. Thankfully, he gets himself a ton of help figuring out what to
Yes,
do in
sir.
the form of spider people from various different universes dragged
Great movie,
into Miles'
man.
dimension by the
One of my
movie's
favorite.
big bad. What felt like it could easily have been a cynical cash grab turned out to exceed everyone's expectations. It's considered
Facts.
to be one of the best, if not the single best Spider-Man movie ever made. It's beloved by critics, it made a killing at the box office, it won all the awards. So when we all heard that it was getting a pair of sequels and Across
Yes,
and
sir.
Beyond the
I
Spider-Verse,
can't wait for
let's
the
say that
Beyond.
Those movies had a lot to live up to. And thankfully, the recently released
It lived
Across
up
the
to it.
Spider-Verse is great. Seriously, when this movie first got teased, I was concerned that it was just going to turn into a cameo fest with too much fan service. And while it did lean in more on the cameos and fan service
did have a
than
lot
the
of
previous
cameos.
one, it also managed to be a worthy sequel to one of the best superhero films ever made. Even if that cliffhanger at the end did leave me a little bit disappointed. Also, I don't think
That was
this
the
a problem with
worst.
the movie, but just one with the
That was
theaters
the
that I
worst.
saw it in having really bad audio mixing. I had a hard time hearing a lot of Gwen and Hobie's dialogue at various points. I thought it was just a me thing. You know, I am getting older these days. Maybe my hearing's going. But then I
There you
started
go.
seeing other people bringing it up
But they
online.
fixed it though, right?
Here's hoping that they get the whole thing resolved. Even considering those minor hiccups though, the movie was a visual masterpiece, throwing us into multiple new universes and showing us hundreds, literal
It was
hundreds
amazing,
of new
bro.
Spider-Man, each with their own unique visual aesthetics and styles. For me, the standouts had to be Spider-Gwen's watercolor world and
Yeah,
the
that was cool.
incredible 80s paper cutout animations of Spider-Punk. Also, biggest laugh clearly goes to the Lego universe, which turns out was animated by a 14-year-old.
I seen it. That's
It's
crazy,
these days,
bro.
man. You guys are so talented.
is crazy.
Without a doubt, Across the Spider-Verse took all the ideas
You
from
got
the
it,
first
man.
film and turned them up to 11. Spoiler warning for Across the Spider-Verse in case you didn't figure it out by this
I seen
point.
it. I ain't gonna lie, I
The
seen it
events of
twice.
Several recent
I seen it
movies,
twice.
including Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which, yes, Doctor Strange is specifically called out in this movie.
Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd back on Earth
19999.
Holes have started showing up throughout the multiverse. These
Yep.
have let bad guys slip into alternate dimensions and wreak havoc.
Got
In response,
Childish
Miguel
Gambino.
O'Hara, the sci-fi Spider-Man 2099, has set up the Spider Society to help police the multiverse and bring all these villains home. But when Miles wants to join the Spider Society, Miguel refuses him at every step, because Miles is actually part of the problem. He unintentionally created the Spot, a multi-dimensional villain, and the events of Into the Spider-Verse were never supposed
Hit
to
with a
happen.
bagel.
Miles was not supposed to be bitten by the radioactive spider. His world's Peter Parker was not supposed to die. Miles was never supposed to take on the role of Spider-Man in the first place. What's even worse, that spider that bit Miles wasn't even from his
Earth,
universe.
yep.
So Miles is the original anomaly that started knocking over all these dominoes. So to help set things straight, Miguel and his Spider Society are trying their best to, quote, restore the canon, to make things things right by ensuring that the big events that are supposed to happen to every Spider-Man across every world actually happen.
No.
And if they don't, well then the multiverse itself could collapse. You know, no pressure. But see, loyal theorists, I have a problem with his line of logic. It
Why is
doesn't
that?
sit right with me given everything that we see both in this movie and throughout the wider multiverse that this movie sits within. I think Miguel is making a
let's see what
huge
he's
mistake
talking
here.
about.
I think he's wrong about the whole canon events thing. I also think he's wrong about Miles being the real danger of all of this. And that
Okay.
error is ultimately going to destroy everything that we love about every superhero movie if they don't set things right. We're not only looking at the collapse of the Spider-Verse here, we are looking at the end of the Marvel
Marvel
Cinematic Universe. So change into
Whoa,
your
hold on now.
Spider-Sonas, friends, and let's swing into it.
It's like,
With the
nah.
film, we're introduced to the idea of canon events. According to Miguel,
Yep.
these are fixed events in time that must happen for a universe to remain stable. Basically, it's the explanation for why so many different versions of
All
Spider-Man
go through the same
across
thing.
so many different stories all experience the same things. They had to happen for that universe to
To
exist.
exist.
Now,
Yes,
they
sir.
don't outright give us an explicit list of canon
Police
events that have
Captain
to occur for all
Dime.
the Spider-Man, but they do show us images of several others within the web of life and destiny. The ones I spotted included a spider bite giving someone superpowers, the death of an Uncle Ben
Uncle
as
Ben.
a figure, teaching Spider-Man the lesson that with great power comes
Comes
great
great
responsibility,
responsibility.
connecting with a love interest,
Uncle
sometimes with
Aaron.
an upside-down kiss in the rain, a wedding
Gwen.
to a love interest, a symbiote creating a nemesis, throwing
get
the
it yet.
Spider-Man costume away, and being crushed by rubble before finding the strength to
To lift it. Okay,
Gwen
okay.
also mentions that in
Oh,
every
wow.
other universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man, and in every universe it doesn't work out. So
Yeah.
that one may or may not be a canon event as well. But the big one, the one that applies the most to this particular story,
Police Captain
Police
died.
Captain close to Spider-Man dies, usually by trying to save a child from falling debris. This is where the main conflict of the story comes in. Miles' dad is about to be sworn in as captain.
Just
of
tell him don't be a
NYPD,
captain,
and
bro.
Obviously, he doesn't want his dad to die, but you apparently can't bypass a canon event, and Miguel refuses to let Miles leave to save his father's life. This is something that Miguel had to learn the hard way. According to Miguel, he wanted to be happy with a family, and so he found himself a universe where that universe's version of him
But you
had
went
been
to a
killed,
whole different
then stepped
universe.
in and secretly replaced his dead self. It sounds complicated, but basically
That
he
seems
just
more
pulled a Rick and
extreme.
Morty. In fact, if we're being honest, this whole movie is just pulling one big Rick and Morty, Spider Society, Citadel of Ricks.
Ricks.
Watch. It's not
Hey,
bad,
yeah,
but
I
I'm just saying.
never thought about it like
Anyway,
that.
Miguel stepping in was an issue since his death
Rick
was
and Morty's my
considered to be
show.
a canon event in that timeline, leading to that universe collapsing. People were erased from existence, including Miguel's daughter, who disappeared in his arms. By the end of it all, the universe was gone, leaving Miguel devastated and determined to make sure that it never happened again. This threat also checks out in the movie, too. As soon as Miles saves Captain
Saves,
Sam
yep.
Mbatten and
Started-
bypasses the canon event there, a dark hole
Universe started
starts
getting
swallowing
sucked up.
that
Pause.
world. All of this sets up a great conflict between Miles and Miguel for
Pause.
the rest of the movie. Just like Miles, we don't want his dad to die. But just like Miguel, we don't want that universe to collapse either. But here's the thing. When I really sat down and started thinking about this, the whole canon events thing, I'm not buying it. First of all, I have a lot of questions about
It's not
Miguel's
buying it.
story here. He claims that the universe with his family collapsed because he bypassed a canon event. So, does that
But-
mean that Miguel's death was a canon event? But who then was it a canon event for? Was he the Uncle Ben or the police captain in this situation? Or was he just some random guy? Was he the Spider-Man of that world? He has the powers in the title after all. Would that then mean that Spider-Man's death is a canon event? That shouldn't be the case
Oh.
since Miguel later yells at Miles for getting the Spider-Man of his world killed. And considering how much Marvel, Disney, and Sony want to milk this character until the end of time, something tells me that Spider-Man's death is not going to be a corporate
Nah,
approved
facts.
canon event that's going to happen all the time. Additionally, how many times has Miguel seen this actually happen? We only see the one instance, so is Miguel working with a data set of just one? That isn't enough test cases to make such a weird multiversal big
Okay, he's talking now.
okay with so many people dying.
I'm intrigued.
In short, it doesn't make sense. And the other canon events start falling apart too when you really look at them. Like, speaking of Miles getting his Peter Parker killed, didn't that disrupt every other canon event of Miles's universe? Shouldn't that universe have imploded? Or is that universe self-correcting around Miles? Given how much of an anomaly Miguel makes Miles out to be, that probably shouldn't be the case if Miguel is truly right in his hypothesis. Another easy example would be the symbiote attaching to someone and becoming a nemesis for Spider-Man. What's the problem here? Well, Across the Spider-Verse features a moment where the Spot briefly pops into
The
the
Venom.
universe of the Tom Hardy Venom movies to steal some gum. But it doesn't seem like there's a Spider-Man in the Venomverse for Eddie Brock to butt heads with, considering Eddie doesn't react to Spider-Man being unmasked when he briefly crossed over into the MCU during the post-credit scene for Let There Be Carnage. Another example would be Spider-Man connecting with and marrying their love interest. This problem comes with the Amazing Spider-Man films, which are directly connected to this universe through a cameo with Andrew Garfield. Sure, he fell in love with Gwen Stacy in his world,
Never
but
got
after
married.
her death, he focuses all of his time and energy into being Spider-Man, as he explains in No Way Home.
You have someone?
I got no time for
Peter Parker stuff. You know?
That is years without a love interest, without building any sort of a relationship, without a wedding, etc., etc. And yet,
Oh,
as
nah,
far
that's
as
a
we can
sad
tell,
face.
The world of the Amazing Spider-Man still hasn't collapsed nearly a decade after we last saw it. Thirdly, we gotta talk about the Uncle Ben moment. This death is supposed to be a massive world-shaking event that sets Spider-Man on his path, teaching him all about power and responsibility.
R.I.P. Uncle
No, it
Ben,
doesn't
nah.
literally need to be a Ben Parker who dies. For
Could be Uncle
Miles,
Aaron.
it was Uncle Aaron. For
Yup.
Gwen, it was her friend Peter Parker.
Aaron.
For Miguel, it looks like it was his daughter. But
Got
here's
the
the
same
issue
name as
that I
me.
find with all of this. Tom Holland's Peter Parker operates as Spider-Man in the MCU for literal actual years before he eventually has his Uncle Ben
Aw, man.
moment. Just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, the writers of the MCU Spider-Man movies have stated that Uncle Ben's death in the MCU did happen, but it didn't have the same impact on Holland's Peter Parker as the others across the multiverse. Instead, the importance of this moment was shifted onto Aunt May in Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, you might be thinking, hey, it happens eventually, so we're all good, but
Yeah.
I'm just gonna ignore the timeline here. In every other dimension that we've ever seen ever,
It was
this
in the
Uncle
beginning.
Ben moment happens within months, even days after he's bitten by the spider. And across the Spider-Verse, Paviter Prabhakar has been operating as Spider-Man for
He had
just
no
6
bad
months.
things.
And clearly, he's already had his Uncle Ben moment. The
did?
Maguire, Garfield, and Miles Morales Spider-Man have all had their uncles die within just days of getting bit. And yet, the MCU isn't on the brink of collapse because Spider-Man hasn't had his Uncle Ben moment as quickly as all the other universes. But the
Wait,
thing that really drove the nail into the coffin for me, one of the biggest of these so-called canon events has to be a spider biting someone and giving them powers. Verse has a Spider-Man to begin with, right? Well, we see the spider bite as the first canon event that's explained to Miles. And yet, at the end of the movie, when we visit Earth 42, the world where Miles' spider
There's
came
no
from,
Spider-Man.
that doesn't have a Spider-Man.
Yup.
And it's still there. Sure, it's not in great shape. There's a lot of crime.
Sinister
a
Six.
Sinister Six cartel that seems to be running things. Massive fires throughout all of New York City. But the world
I wanna see them,
itself has
Sinister
not
Six.
collapsed. Now, I can already hear plenty of you furiously typing away in the comments. Just because these canon events haven't happened yet in these worlds doesn't mean they won't happen. And the order of the canon events doesn't necessarily need to be the same every time. And believe me, I hear you. That was one of my initial thoughts when I was crafting this theory
But-
too. But again, it doesn't line up with what we see in the movie. All thanks to that necessary death of a police captain close to Spider-Man bit that drives the whole conflict. Remember, Mumbattan starts collapsing immediately after Miles
Yeah.
saves Captain Singh. Literal seconds after that event. If canon events don't have to happen at specific times, couldn't Captain Singh or another captain have just died later in the story of that world? And yet, here's Miles'
But it gotta be
world,
a
which is
certain
totally
captain.
fine. It didn't collapse when Peter Parker died. All of this tells me that what the movie says about canon events and the fallout of breaking canon is wrong. Miguel has misidentified the problem.
I'm assuming
what
you're wrong
we're seeing
too.
in these movies isn't the breaking of canon, it's incursions, just like we've been seeing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that is way, way worse than any of these Spider-Men think it is. Now, if you dropped off the main MCU after Endgame, you might not know what I'm talking about here. We first learn about incursions
Doctor
in
Strange,
Doctor
yep.
Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, when Strange is brought before the Illuminati of Earth 838.
Even your arrival here confuses and destabilizes reality. The larger the footprint you leave behind, the greater the risk of an incursion.
Basically, when people from one universe cross into another, the two universes start getting pulled together. Everything starts breaking down until at least one of the universes is torn apart at the
absorbed.
seams, killing everyone in it. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? This is an incursion, and they are no joke. We see what's left of a universe after its incursion, and it's a wasteland. It is a void of nothingness. This is such a big threat that the Illuminati think Doctor Strange merely existing in their universe is a major risk, and that he needs to be dealt with. But hold on, why am I connecting this movie to the MCU? Sony is
Black
the one that's
Bolt,
making
cool,
the Spider-Verse
boy.
films, not Marvel. And that's correct. But Spider-Verse goes well out of its way to make sure that there is a connection established to the MCU. And it's not a blink and you miss it cameo or offhanded reference either. Like I said at the top of the episode, Miguel straight up references the events of
Yep.
No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness within the first 15 minutes
Is it
of
Doctor
this movie.
Strange?
Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd back on Earth 1999-99.
Earth 1999-99 is a designation of the MCU in Marvel multimedia, first called out in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe A to Z. No Way Home connected the older Sony films to the MCU multiverse, so the projections of both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man
No way.
also connect this movie to them too.
And they're making a live
The
action
Spot briefly
Miles,
visits
I
Mrs.
seen.
Chen from the Venom movies, a world also connected through No Way Home, and Donald Glover cameos as a variant of
Yep,
Uncle
I remember
Aaron
that.
suited up as the Prowler, the same role that we see him play in the MCU. But the linchpin that 100% slots this into the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse now, when Miguel begins his explanation of the Spider-Verse to Miles, he projects a simulation of the multiverse, one that looks exactly like how the multiverse has been portrayed throughout the MCU. And I'm not just talking, oh, it kind of looks like it if you squint at it, I guess. This is exactly the same glowing, glimmering white threads branching off.
You see Andrew and them on the little pictures.
Loki, just like what we saw in Quantumania. Having all of these connections to the MCU, positioning this as part of the wider Marvel Cinematic franchise, means that we have to bring in the MCU logic here. Sony can't have their MCU cake and eat it too, even if they do buy two cakes. If people from one universe crossing over into another universe is something that causes incursions, that is what we're seeing in this franchise. And it explains everything. It solves all of the issues that we've been having. When Miguel crossed over into that other universe where he died so he could live a happy life with his family, he was there. He caused that world to be erased through an incursion. It explains why Earth 42, the world without a Spider-Man because our Miles got bit by its spider, is totally fine despite it breaking canon. No extra dimensional visitors have spent any significant time there, thereby avoiding an incursion.
Man, the
it
spider
also
died.
Explains what's happening in Mumbattan. Miles, Gwen, Spider-Punk, and the Spot basically destroy a massive stretch of the city, leaving a giant footprint behind. The hole that opens up in Mumbattan is the beginnings of an incursion, one that the Spider Society is arguably making worse by trying to fix. And that's the bitter irony in all of this. In Miguel's desire to try and fix the problem that he wrongly identifies as breaking the canon, what's he do? He gathers spider people from across the multiverse into one place, and then he sends them on missions to realities that aren't their own. Every single time that he does that, the Spider Society is risking another massive series of these universe-ending events.
That would be a crazy twist.
By trying to help the situation, by forcing things to fit a proper mold to be the right, correct way,
that would be a
Miguel
crazy
has made
twist.
it exponentially worse. Not only increasing the risk of incursions happening throughout the multiverse, but by indoctrinating a literal army of spider people into simply standing by while innocent victims die. All in preservation of things being done the right way, the correct way. And thematically, this theory makes a lot of sense. The story that I suspect that the Spider-Verse franchise is trying to tell us is that anyone can be Spider-Man, but that everyone is gonna be doing it their own way. Everyone is gonna be doing it a little differently. Everyone's gonna carry that responsibility differently. But that doesn't mean that
crazy. That was a
doing
twist.
it wrong. You are your own person, and you can choose your destiny. You are not the product of a bunch of events that came before you. Miguel getting angry at Miles for messing up how things are supposed to happen, yelling at him because he's not supposed to be a Spider-Man, that could be a stand-in for a lot of the audience resistant to change. An audience who wants to see the same stories playing out over and over again the right way. Or that can also be a stand-in for where we are in society today, where certain classes of people are allowed to do things with their lives that others aren't just because they're right or correct. Just like how certain people can and can't be Spider-Man in Miguel's eyes. But Miles turns that entire idea on its head. Being told that he isn't supposed to be Spider-Man gives Miles the freedom, the permission to stop trying to be Spider-Man, to stop trying to think about what Peter Parker or Miguel O'Hara or Gwen Stacy would do, and instead to just be himself, to just be Miles. Like he says in this moment,
everyone keeps telling me how
that is the best part of the movie.
Nah,
I would do my own thing.
And that right there,
that part was
that
tough,
was
bro.
the most
That part was
heroic
tough.
lesson that any Spider-Man across any of the universes can possibly teach.
That part was
hey,
tough.
being Spider-Man has to be rough on the body, especially with that summer heat coming up. Miles, Peter, Gwen, Miguel, they all need to stay hydrated to make sure they can fight regardless of the universe that they're in. And it's never been easier to do that than with today's sponsor, Arrow.
Alright. Yo, shout out to Film Theory, bro. Like, when you watch these videos, it makes you think a different way, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't think, cause I know it's not associated with Marvel. Well, it is Marvel, but like, you know what I'm saying? It's not like Marvel producing Sony. So I didn't think that they're gonna connect the universes. But he did bring up the Doctor Strange. I thought that was just a little funny thing, but it could be incursions happening. You know what I'm saying? That would make sense. But if that's the case, it's gonna get way worse. Cause what's his name? Miguel is in his world now, and everybody's all over the place. So it might be get real bad. If what he just said is true, it might get real bad. But I do definitely think it was about people learning how to do things differently as well too, like they were saying at the end, like Miles learning how to do things his own way. But yeah, that's a very interesting thought. As of right now, the next movie's coming out next year. I think it's in March, something like that. So hopefully they don't push that back, because I'm really excited to see that. I'm gonna review it like always, so make sure y'all be on the lookout for that. You know what I'm saying? Got a long time, but we still be ready. You know what I'm saying? But if y'all new to my channel, hit that sub button, hit that like button, hit that leave a on our post. You feel me? I appreciate y'all watching the video. Shout out to Film Theory. You know, if you have any requests, any reactions y'all want to see, let me know in the comments down below. But we out of here.